Howdy, folks. Happy Friday. Thank God it's Friday. We have a few things to chat about today. The rumors are starting to pick up. It is now 2 weeks, 14 days exactly before the trade deadline. The big names still out there are Adam Henrique. Now Noah Hannafin is the talk has gotten hot and heavy. And also Chris Tanev and a few others. I mean, we'll discuss that. But we'll bring Pete Tessier on here, but we'll start with the pre-show. Go ahead, Russ.
All right, so let me ask you guys, have you ever worn last year's pants?
I'm wearing last year's pants right now.
Okay, well.
I changed my pants annually.
Well, okay. I change my pants every day, but the pants that I own are at least a year old.
Okay. Well, now Major League Baseball is doing the same thing because of Fanatics, and the San Diego Padres opened up their spring training in last year's pants. And you could do a sad trombone and say, well, these guys are so, they make so much money, this, that. But, there's one thing about being a ball player, especially for spring training. Like, some guys only get spring training, and this might be their only spring training, and they go away. And, you want to feel like a real major leaguer. You're not going to really feel like a real major leaguer with see-through pants.
See-through?
Oh, yeah.
You can see the pockets. You could see
those pants are bad.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, this is the thing. This is the thing that's hilarious. Fanatics has taken over everywhere. They have the contract for what? The NHL, the NBA, Major League Baseball. I don't think they have NFL.
No.
And based on what's going on, I hope the NFL runs and hides because, I mean, not just the people who want to buy a jersey because, I'm not one of those people anymore, but I used to back in the day. And hockey jerseys, it was CCM. They were CCM or Adidas they were always pretty good quality. And now the shit that I see now that I see people walking around with in the arenas or sitting up in the press box and looking down. I mean, if they got it from some sweatshop in China, I wouldn't be surprised. But those are better than the ones that Fanatics are putting out right now.
Oh.
Yeah. People are talking about getting Majestic back. Majestic was a good I don't want to say clothier, but they made good jerseys and stuff. I still have a Majestic upstairs and it's lasted.
Peter, this is the thing. I mean, okay, the NHL has a contract with Fanatics. The NHL is probably making millions of dollars on the contract from Fanatics, but I'm sure they have quality control, meaning if you put up a bad product, we demand that you put out a better one.
Right.
I mean, to me, what's going on right now in Major League Baseball or the NHL, if I'm the league, I'm saying this is crap. We want better jerseys. And until you give us better jerseys, we're going to be wearing the old stuff for another year. Unless that's a contract.
I think, look, it certainly all looks very subpar in quality.
Yeah.
What the fans have seen from Fanatics is almost comical.
Yeah.
With spelling mistakes, things all over the backs of jerseys, logo placement, and things like that. It's bad.
Right.
I don't know how you do quality control when you don't have an input on where the manufacturing is. So what I'm very curious about
I have one answer.
Is Fanatics gone to an on-demand or a semi-on-demand type model of production, so that what happens is they never run. So let's pick a player. I don't know. Pick a baseball player.
Austin Matthews.
Yeah, or Austin Matthews. So all of a sudden, they've got some data that says we sell approximately 10,000 Austin Matthews jerseys a year. And this is where we sell them on. So as Fanatics then going to a supply chain management situation going, okay, we're not going to run 10,000. We're going to run 5 because we know we sell 5 for the first 6 months of the year, and then we can focus on something else. There's a whole host of reasons when you get into manufacturing, supply chain, shipping management that determines a lot of these things. And the point I would get at is the Fanatics model of production so flawed that they can't provide guarantees of quality and stuff because they have their own challenges with supply chain management that they don't manage very well.
Okay, so when you look up global vertical brands, it says on Fanatics through v-commerce, not e-commerce, Fanatics on-demand manufacturing, and then starts going into other stuff. So clearly, the on-demand part is real. But we heard from like the NHL, like, hey, the same process that Adidas is using, Fanatics will use, which is what you were saying. But my whole thing is, and this has happened in the baseball card world where Fanatics took over like Topps.
Right.
But I hate to say it, you can go online, you'll see there's quality control issues. So you could take over that building, Pete. You could have all the same people, but there still has to be someone in the end to watch over those people. And if you don't, stuff's going to go wrong.
Yeah. I mean, back in the day, like, okay, and we know this because of card collecting, and I used to card collect, and now it's so ridiculous that you have to break out a micrometer and a microscope to make sure that the card is going to be rated a 9 or some bull crap like that. But when you're getting production where the card is off center by like a quarter of an inch, the card's worthless then. So so quality control in terms of baseball cards is one thing, but quality control in terms of jerseys, when you have a nameplate and I saw in one of the, like, I think it was Seattle Mariners or Milwaukee Brewers jerseys side by side with last year's, and the last year's had, say it was what was the Christian Yelich,
right?
And it had his name, the letters YELICH with blue, and then behind it there was like a white material, so it was double letter. It looked decent. And now the jersey now looks like somebody bought something at Walmart and ironed on the letters. That's how bad it looks. And it's a bad look for these leagues if they're wearing substandard crap, and they're responsible because they're the ones.
They are, Mike. And I think to that point, and then we can move on to hockey.
Yes.
Is Fanatics is a brand based around someone else's brand.
Right.
Their value proposition is the brands we're stuck on. Whereas when you go to Adidas, to Nike, to, I don't know, pick what's another jersey manufacturer.
Majestic or
Nike is its own brand. It has its own brand value. What I think is going to happen with Fanatics, if it doesn't change and it stays this way, is that not necessarily the leagues, but if you look on the Fanatics website, there's a whole bunch of teams and single entities that are partnered or aligned with the Fanatics brand that they use to sort of provide brand quality and sort of brand reputation. That's a big hit if you screw that up. So Nike and Adidas, two global brands, wanted to bid and do things for the NHL, MLB, whoever you want to be. They brought their brand value to the league because they're powerful enough. Fanatics needed those leagues to help develop a brand power, and they're not doing it very well.
And these are Nike pants, just so you know.
Okay. Well, all right, let's get started here. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Friday, February 23rd, 2024.
I'm Pete Tessier, coming to you from balmy Winnipeg.
I'm Russ Cohen, wearing, I think, 2 years ago pants, but okay.
And I'm Michael Agello, and this is the HockeyBuzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com, and I will not carbon date my pants. All right, let's get started with the news of the day. And Peter, it's focused. Russ was telling me about it. I had heard some chatter about it, about the commissioner of the NHL, Gary Bettman, going to Winnipeg, a drive for season tickets. I mean, I had heard early in the season that this was sort of not a crisis, but sort of a concern. But it went by the wayside when you saw how well the Jets were doing. At one time, they were leading the league in points, but they're still a very competitive team. But the season ticket base went down from, I think Russ said 13,000 to under 10,000.
And
500.
And 13,000 with the big wait list.
Right. So, was it the pandemic? Was it the team's play? Was it, what was it, and what can be done? And is this franchise in trouble now?
Well, let's put it this way. If the franchise is in trouble now, it was never going to be here for long.
That's fair to say, because I think that's, you're right.
The fact that the business partner in a number of ventures in Winnipeg is the first Baron of Fleet, Mr. Thompson. Yeah. I believe he is the 26th richest man in the world. Might be in the top 20 now. And that's with a net worth in around $30 billion.
Right. So he's the
US dollars.
He's the Steve Cohen of hockey.
He should really be able to absorb the number that Mark Chipman says is missing. And that number is approximately $4,000 in season tickets. The Jets have approximately an average ticket price of about $95 a game. Okay. So you do the math, that works out to a little over $15 million over the course of 41 games.
95 Canadian or 95 US?
95 Canadian.
Okay.
So that works out to a course of about $15 million over 41 games in terms of lost ticket revenue.
Okay.
David Thompson can probably use $100 Canadian bills, ones that have regular color, and use that as toilet paper for $15 million for a year.
Yeah, to light his cigars.
Yeah, right. Like
But here's the argument, Pete. So the argument is, and Mark Chipman said, this isn't sustainable if it stays like this. You can't look. I know in the old days that rich guys absorbed the loss, right? But now you have to look at the complex thing. That was back in the days when players weren't asking to be part owners or making big money. Mm-hmm. And now players are making big money and you're having to charge more for tickets. And now these owners are like, I don't want to take any losses. And you can't force an owner to take a loss.
So you can't. But the losses can be forced upon them, sure. Right? So I'm not saying I don't have empathy for Mark Chipman, but the Jets are a little bit of their own worst nightmare as an organization. Mark Chipman is an incredibly loyal person, and you talk to a lot of business people. Loyalty is the number one trait in something that people admire. Mm-hmm. But blind loyalty can also get you in a lot of hot water. The Jets are in a bit of hot water because, one, they've done a lot of things internally and made investments into the arena, into the things, but it still lags. There's a fundamental flaw with the arena. It's very hard to move around in outside the seats at intermissions.
Okay.
And it's the second smallest arena in the league.
Second smallest. Which Gary Bettman praised when they came back in the league and why it would work. Right. So what the reason with that is when you're building an arena and you want to get to 18,000 seats, those extra 3,000 are the most expensive to make.
Sure.
And they're the cheapest to fill. Mm-hmm. So
right.
your ROI on them isn't there.
Right.
So, but when a case like this comes, you can't get anyone into cheaper seats because they don't exist. So is any revenue better than no revenue? Well, it depends on your methodology, right? But the part that really come out is talking to people, why aren't small, medium businesses supporting the Jets? And I had a long conversation with someone today about this. And his point was very counter to what mine is that people are liking what's in the arena better. They're doing that. And I'm saying, well, I've got kids who are 24 and 20, and they like going. Someone gives them a ticket, but they're not spending their own money. And because they said it's like next to impossible. There's no incentive. Like, so you've done what companies tend to do. You want to reward people who are loyal, but it then prevents new people from coming in. So if you're a Jet season ticket holder, you get a card and a member number, you enter it in, you get 25% off certain beverages and food. So the people you want to come in are paying more than the loyal people. you've got to find a way just to average that out to make it better. It's a good deal if you're a season ticket member, but it's not so much that someone's going to cough up $5,000 for 2 seats in the cheap seats and say, well, now I get to save 25%. The math doesn't work. So there's these counterintuitive things, and their branding and their experience in there is so bad. They have talented people. They have mediocre talented people doing incredibly important things with no innovation into the fan experience. Like, you go to the Winnipeg Jets game, it's basically 1970s and 80s night for music. Okay. If you hear something played in the last 3 years, it's an anomaly.
It's
boring.
Like that. Okay.
It's boring. You have B-level radio DJs who on country music stations running around before the game going, make some noise and shooting T-shirt guns. It's just boring. Okay. It's entertainment from the 90s.
Well, okay, so
and so here's the other thing. For years, and this is where Mark Chipman got a bit of a bad rub in the business community, and he's just starting to understand it. He goes, well, it'd be nice if we had some support from fellow businesses. Okay, Mark, we've got a burgeoning beer scene, like most cities do. How come you're not putting our beers in there? Oh.
So no craft beer, nothing like that?
Well, there is now, but they signed a long-term deal with Budweiser. So anything you got in there was a Budweiser beer.
Even if it's Budweiser, it's a Budweiser.
Yeah, so it's done with this and that. No local businesses. Finally, they got a bit. So then what happens is so they set up these areas where you can buy these beers, and they're in the tall cans and stuff. And they pour, or you can take them to your thing. You can't pay cash. You have to pay with a card. So they've gone to this whole cashless bullshit. Technically speaking, you can't be cashless because it's against the law. Because if a note's legal tender, you have to accept it. So I don't know how companies get away with this nonsense.
Yeah,
so that even though everyone's got a debit card or whatever, right. Sometimes people like to take out $100, go to a game, spend it. That's my spending limit, or whatever. You're now alienating those people.
I'm pretty sure that most of the arenas post COVID have gone to,
and I think it's a joke.
It is, but it's unfortunately the reality. Well, go ahead, Russ.
Yeah, here's the bigger question, Pete. So, and you brought it up almost at the beginning. So, because this is what I was talking about with Mike. The NHL made concessions just to put Winnipeg in the league. Smaller building, just enough season ticket holders. They already started to sort of move off of what their hard line used to be from Arizona.
Because they were stuck, Russ. But
they weren't stuck like 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
Atlanta threw the keys on the table.
I understand, but you still could have. I understand that, but they still could have done something temporarily, but they didn't. And so instead, they did this. And now the question it's a great one by Pete. Should it have ever been done?
Well, and that's the point. So I'm a former season ticket holder. Like, I had season tickets right up until into the pandemic. And what I realized is my life kind of changed a little bit. So technically speaking, people should be following suit. Well, I pumped in God knows how much money for 12 years. Shouldn't there be enough people to come follow? Hey, yeah, let's go in. Okay, those some great seats came up. Well, that's where the problem becomes, is where do those people go? And I will say COVID had an impact. Mm-hmm. I'm going to get a little
But what else are they spending money on in the winter, Pete?
I'll get a little political here.
The Blue Bombers.
There were people who wouldn't come to the arena who or said, well, if they're going to, because of these health things with vaccinations and stuff, we won't come. Right. And they didn't come back. I know for a fact of having clients when we go and give them tickets, they didn't want me during the pandemic and not going now. The other thing is, like a lot of Canadian institutions, we're doing things that are land acknowledgements for our First Nations. Probably if you come to a Canadian arena, you hear this is a Treaty 1 land, home of the Anishinaabe and blah, 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 Ojibwe, Korean, blah, blah, blah. I have had clients who go, I won't go to the games because of all this woke business going on. Woke liberal stuff. I'm not there. Yet on their Facebook pages and stuff, they're all love the Jets, love the Bombers, and the football team and stuff. But that triggers them.
Yep. Well, no,
Manitoba is a very bizarre conservative place when you get out of the city. There's a lot of, and it's messed up. It's weird. And that, I think, is stuck too, because you need people driving into the city. There's so much personal wealth in this province, like with farmers and stuff, and they're not spending it there, and they made a choice.
Right.
And that's the political times we're in.
I mean, they do that in Toronto as well, and maybe Toronto being the big metropolis that it is, that it's more accepted. The woke stuff. I mean, whatever.
Well, there's 8 million people.
Let me just exactly. Let me just ask you this, because I know that I was a Sabres season ticket holder for, let's see, started in 2006, probably 2014 or 15, 9 years. And the only reason I was a Sabres season ticket holder was because I could get Leaf games at the flat rate, because they started variable price. Is there variable pricing in Winnipeg, like based on opponent, or is it?
Yeah, there is variable pricing.
Okay. So the only benefit for a season ticket holder is, at least in Buffalo, was you're getting your ticket at a flat rate for the seat that you're in. I was in the 300 level. I was paying $20 some odd a ticket, flat rate. So I got the Leafs games at 25. If I had bought individual tickets, I would have been paying $75, that type of thing.
Yeah.
So there was a benefit of buying season tickets.
Yeah.
If they have to increase the benefit, give the season ticket holders something.
Right. And that's it. And so, like, for instance, I actually had a credit for my seat deposits that I paid for where we were. And so one of the Jets ticket reps called up and said, "Hey, you got to use this. Like, it's not a refund." I said, "Okay." So I said, "Let's go to the calendar." We actually found a game that we weren't busy on. That's part of the problem for us personally, is just going on, even though we don't have young kids doing things. So she wanted to go see the Oilers and McDavid. So we got that. And I said, "Well, where can you get seats?" She goes, "We got a few available P1s." I said, "I don't want to sit at the top of the thing. If I'm going to go to this game, let's go sit close." Well, they're $267 a ticket. So that's what I'm looking at to get in the door. Now, it's not that $267 isn't a fair price. I don't have an issue with that.
Right.
But I can watch it on TV in the comfort of my own room on a 70-inch screen in high definition with fantastic sound. I can get up and go to the bathroom whenever I want. Right. I can have my own food, and I can have my selection of beers.
Sure.
And it didn't cost me $267. And that's the variable that you have to consider. When people are finding reasons to say it's better for me to stay at home, the problem isn't that you don't have a good product. The problem is the experience going in. Right. And I hope when Bettman sits down, and I know this will never happen, but every person in that community should look at him and say, get rid of your metal detectors. That arena, getting into the arena, because it's a small arena in the winter with those metal detectors and the way the building is built, is a fiasco. A fiasco of epic proportions. And
see, that doesn't happen like in Philly. They've got it down.
But so you don't have minus 30 outside.
Sometimes. No, but they're still. Yeah, I guess they want.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not comparing the weather conditions and everything, Winnipeg to Buffalo, but we've got our own problems with snow. But the problem here is that the team has been bad for 13 years. That they've made playoffs in 13 years. Had say take the Jets and what they've done and put it in Buffalo, there'd be 19,000. There wouldn't be able to get a ticket because they're starved for success on the ice. But my issue here, and then we'll move on from this, is okay. 9,500 is not great, but it's maybe acceptable. I know they want to drive it up higher. How can you complain if you're the National Hockey League or the ownership of the Jets, which is part of the ownership group of the NHL? How can you complain about what's going on in Winnipeg when you have this friggin' joke in Arizona where Craig Morgan just posted there are 4 games this year at Mullet Arena that topped 1 million in gross ticket sales. The Bruins, the Leafs, Edmonton, and the upcoming game against Chicago. And he's saying, well, in 18 years in Glendale, they only had 37 total gates over $1 million. I don't care.
I mean, look, I heard Edmonton fans took over the place.
Right.
So
It was
Mike,
it was a Toronto home game.
To your point, and I can't remember his name, but the guy was the trucking magnate who came in and got the Coyotes, and he owned them when they moved to Glendale.
right.
Every owner, and Mark Shipman's no different, and I don't fault him for this, and it goes back to your point, Russ, they don't want to take losses. They saw that guy's fortune get flushed down the toilet.
Right.
And I'll lay money, Gary had some words said to him by a lot of owners saying, if this ever happens to us, there's no way you're taking me with it.
Yeah, no doubt. But let me ask you the last thing, because you brought up,
that was the guy's name.
You brought up the thing where, you're watching TV, you're watching the game, it's great, you can get your own beer. That's great until you lose your team. Then you're going to be watching the Leafs, and if you don't like the Leafs, then
they won't be watching the Leafs, Russ.
No, but what I'm saying?
They'll be watching the biggest fan bases that come into that when team shows up in the MTS Center, the Leafs, the Habs, the Bruins, and the Flyers.
Right, so you're going to be watching those
You're
teams.
going to watch them, and no one will care again.
You won't have a team. Now, I agree with you. You have to do something about the in-place, in arena experience. But like the fans just can't unplug and expect this team to survive.
Now you've got a recessionary economy happening. You've got different things. The point I made in the chat, and then we can move on, is I got out of my tickets when I no longer had a company, my small business that was paying for them. I paid for them personally for a few years, and then I was like, yeah, you know what? That's it. There are enough small, medium businesses who can buy a pair of tickets, use them as part of your customer thing. It's a tax deductible thing. It works well. You're basically paying 50 cents on the dollar, go to the game, take a client, give them to them. You can do it. That's where the support needs to come in. And that would be my point out. Why isn't that happening? And as Mark Shipman said, he said in that article that came out, why I've been calling, he's been calling former ticket holders. Well, then you should understand why they're not there. And that's your look. Going and saying, well, we've done all this should make it enjoyable. That's not your problem. Your problem is the people are saying, I don't want to go. And you better figure out why and address those issues.
He's going to talk about corporate support. Short of him going into businesses asking them to, buy Coyote season tickets. I'm not sure what magic wand he can wave.
Well, I mean, I'll just say that, and I can only use this as use my example as the reason why I didn't renew my season tickets. Because at a certain point, like I only wanted to go to the Leaf games because I was covering the team. And at that point, I wasn't able to get the press access. So that was 2 or 3 games a year, whatever, how many times the teams in each division played. And the other 38 games or 39 games, I sold to my friends at cost. So I just got my money back. At a certain point, I couldn't sell off the tickets because nobody wanted to go because the team was bad.
So here's another thing. Then it's not just with the Jets, but they stopped printing tickets. They then made you have to use the ticket exchange to sell them. So the ability to trade tickets and say, you know what, give me $50, you can go to the game. I'll give you my tickets is not there. Yeah. Technology has also made this a headache.
Yes.
It's great for them. Oh, we want to stop scalping. But when there's no scalping going on, you now have made it really difficult for others to buy tickets because I can't go onto the Jets site and look at tickets and go, well, they want 200 a pair. I'll give them 150.
There is a way around this. I do know the answer.
Well, I was just going to say, I know this, being in my 50s, and I think being at my age, I'm fairly technologically proficient, but I liked a tangible thing called a ticket that was printed up, that was sent to you in the mail. And, now, like I have 2 concerts that I'm going to this summer. And
no tickets, right?
I have no tickets. I have an email, and it's like, okay, if I lose this email, I'm effed. I'm screwed.
All right, so 2 things. I did, for Rick Wakeman's farewell tour, he's playing at a small place. I paid extra for a ticket because it's his farewell tour. I'm like, I'm going to get a ticket one last time, right? So I did do that. Otherwise, I use the wallet on my iPhone. Yeah. The other thing is, here's the answer to the other problem, though, because I knew when I bought on for like Met season tickets before they were closing Shea Stadium that there was going to be an issue. There was, they weren't the greatest team. I wasn't going to be able to get rid of tickets. But if you have enough promotional nights where they are limited in scope and there are things that people want, they could sell those online. You get 2 because you got 2 tickets. You get 3 because you got 3 tickets. Those things do work. Those incentives do work. And I don't know what the Jets do for that, but it seems like they're probably not doing enough.
Yeah. I mean, I thought when this is going off, not a particular Jets, but I thought when this trend of getting rid of the tickets and the digital tickets, the entry points, I thought that's where the rise of NFTs would probably come in, is replacing those things in this sort of unique way to have things and stuff like that. You see it with bands, you see it with that. And like, I've got shoe boxes of ticket stubs, and I can go back and look at those. And each time I look at the one, it jogs my memory, and I'll remember something about them, and I'll remember that event.
Right.
One of the most interesting things I saw recently was a person who said, well, we got rid of our cassettes. A lot of us got rid of our vinyl, even though vinyl's coming back. She goes, I'm never going to get rid of my CDs. I've already done that. And she goes, the reason is I can look at that CD and go, oh, and then flip it over and look at the track listing and go, oh, that song's there. I can't do that in Spotify or Apple Music or online.
Right. And
the physical touch of that allows me to do something I can't do digitally. And that's the thing with tickets. Like, I know a guy every year in his ticket group, he goes and designs the tickets and he prints them out, and that's how they do their ticket draft. And they're beautiful, printed. They look exactly like a ticket. And then that's how they do it. You first pick takes that. How fun.
Well, Pete, let me ask you one last thing too. Players in the community, are they in the community? Do they sometimes, something Washington Nationals did very early on, when they weren't even in their new ballpark yet, they were still in RFK. You know what they did? They had their players greet people when they were coming in. Do the Jets do anything like this? Do the players go out?
No. And Sidney Crosby, the Penguins have their deliver, which is great. Like, why can't a guy in the middle of the season, or not in the middle, but before the season, when everyone's in town, you spend one day, you go out and do it. You pick a day and it goes and blah, 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 and do things like that. Or people who bought mini packs or whatever. It's little things like that that are creative for us that don't happen here. Players are in the community. Blake Wheeler used to be around a lot, but he lived in my neighborhood. And he used to bring his kids up to the community center all the time to skate and everything, on the outdoor ice and stuff. They're around, but, they're not. They're like any other stores. You see them out at restaurants, but they're not really doing a lot of that anymore.
They're around, but they're not around. And by the way, I have about a couple hundred concert tickets. I'm going to basically put them in a collage and frame them because that's probably what I'm going to do. Okay. All right. And while Pete's going to step away for a second, but we'll talk about the rumors du jour. Now, Noah Hannafin has really I was saying Noah Hannafin, Pete. Noah Hannafin, basically, it sounds essentially, according to the insiders, meaning CJ and Pierre LeBrun and Elliott and Drager, that Hannafin has told the Flames that he's not going to sign there. That's pretty much that's over with. That all the talk about him signing an extension is done. So he's on the market, and immediately he moves up to number 1 on all these trade lists. And now Elliot Friedman and Jeff Merrick were talking about it on their podcast today. It was very informative, and basically, not telling us anything we didn't know about Hannafin. Hannafin does not want to play in Canada. Toronto was definitely interested, but Toronto would only trade for him if they could sign him, because I think most teams who want to trade for him and spend the assets that would be necessary to get him want to sign him. So that limits it. So Toronto knew that they wouldn't be able to sign him, so they're out on that. But the 4 teams, Russ, that they named for Hannafin were Tampa, Boston, New Jersey, and Florida. Obviously, with some of them, they don't have the assets in terms of draft capital, but they do have young players. Of that list, I mean, I could see scenarios where he could go to all 4, but it will be tough for some of them to be able to make that deal because, like, say, for example, Florida, they have no draft picks, none, but they have Anton Lundell. You could trade Lundell in a deal for Hannafin, but then
they're not going to do that.
You've traded your best young players, who a center, Right. I mean, so I mean, where do you think this Hanifin thing goes?
I think he goes where the best prospects are. So I don't think Florida. I don't think Florida. I don't think Tampa. I think it's the Bruins and who's the other team? Sorry,
New Jersey
or New Jersey. That's where the prospects are. If you're Calgary, you're like, that's it, Noah. You're going to one of these two teams. Decide which one. We have a good package from both, and that's it. I'm going where my job as a GM is to get the best prospects, not to worry about if you're happy. And I'm not taking what Tampa has because it's not good enough.
Yeah, unless you're getting I know that they mentioned a guy like Cernak who's locked up long term. I
don't want that. I need a future. I don't need players locked up that are going to get injured for me. I need to market of new players and a new future to the good fans of Calgary, because getting retreads for a big asset like this isn't going to work.
Well, Peter, we're not talking retreads because Cernak is a good defenseman. I think he's a retread. No, he's. I don't think he's a good.
How old is he?
Cernak, I think he's 26.
Right, so he's 26. So by the time the Calgary Flames are good, he'll be at least 30, and that contract will be up, and I got to sign him again.
No. He was signed to an 8-year deal at $5.2 million. But okay, this is my point, Peter. And then it can be linked to a team like Winnipeg as well. A player who's locked up long term, if you like him, is beneficial because they have problems getting players to come to Calgary and Winnipeg. So that, I don't see like if they like Cernak, and Cernak is 26 years old and you're getting him as part of a deal for Hanifin, who's an expiring contract, who's going to leave at the end of the year. If you're getting somebody that's locked up for 7 more years and you like him and he's young enough, and I think he is 26, yeah, that's part of a deal that I wouldn't mind getting.
Well, that's not.
I think future plan. Let me ask Peter.
I know.
Well, would you mind getting him? No, I wouldn't mind getting him if he's locked up and he's going to be replacement level or better.
Right.
Right? Like, what are you getting that's locked up? That's the point. And so, like Hanifin's going to get something. But I guess the interesting thing for Calgary is now that we know he's definitely not coming back.
Right.
Has Calgary learned, the GM isn't there anymore, both GMs sadly aren't there anymore. So Conroy's sitting here going, do I get hoodwinked like I did with Tkachuk and everything? Or do I hang on and see if I can drive the price up, getting closer to the deadline, and knowing that it's public that he's not staying and that he only wants to go to the States. So Conroy's in a tight spot right now. So if that's on the table with Cernak, I don't see why I wouldn't consider it.
Yeah. I mean, Hanifin has a modified no trade. I think it's eight teams. The speculation is that five of the teams are Canadian markets. Toronto was the only one that wasn't. But again, if he doesn't sign an extension, if he's not open to signing an extension, that takes them out of it. Probably a team like Arizona or something like that. I mean, who knows? We don't know what the list is. But he's got a little bit of control, but not a lot of control. But in a way, he has a lot of control because if he tells Tampa, I'm not signing there, then they're not trading for him. I don't think many of these teams, Russ, are interested in a pure rental when it comes to Hanifin because he's going to cost so much.
No, I get it, but I think even New Jersey would take him as a pure rental, especially if they strike out in the goalie market, and because they have a young defense, like they need some help. I was just saying to Esmir, if it's between Cernak and a pick, or I can get Alexander Holtz and like a conditional first, I'm waving goodbye to Tampa because I want this guy because this guy, plus he's cheap to begin with, and then I'm going to get 5 years worth of cheaper contracts than bringing Cernak in, who by year 4 could be, washed up.
Well, you're not going to get a first-round pick out of Tampa, so it would be Cernak and probably a prospect that they have.
Right, well, that's what I mean. The whole deal is already lesser.
in that situation, I would rather have Holtz and a first. Sure, but I mean, Peter, I think that what you were saying, I think they're going to wait until like the last 2 days. I think they're going to keep they're going to. The only thing that they have to worry about is that teams drop off of the defensive if they make other deals.
Exactly.
But
and the other thing is
But let me just say this: they control it a little bit because they have the second most desirable defense
with Tanev.
Yeah.
Look, out of Calgary's defense core right now, they have 5 UFAs.
Yeah.
Hanifin, Tanev, Kylington, Osterley, and Gilbert.
That was the point I was making, Russ. They have 5 unrestricted free agents, or 4 or 5 unrestricted free agents on defense. Having somebody who's under term, that has term, that is under contract, is very desirable to that team because they're going to have to overpay like they did Weegar, but he's having a good year, and Huberdeau just to get people to come to Calgary.
Yeah, but they're not going to be good for years. They don't need to worry about Cernak at 5.2. They can get guys much cheaper that just want jobs because that's what it's going to be in Calgary. They're not competing.
You get my point, though. They have to overpay.
I do, but again, I could get 2 defensemen for that. I wouldn't do it.
That's why I thought the rumors out there about them trading Rasmus Anderson were laughable because he's one of the only guys they have that's under contract.
No,
why would they trade him? That's dumb.
But look, they're in trouble. Calgary's in trouble because they made some moves that didn't work out. The GM skipped town. I'm kidding.
Why don't you stop?
I'm kidding.
Oh
and now they're in a spot where they have to rebuild. They have an expensive goalie. They're in a bad spot.
Yeah.
They're in a bad spot. Luckily, they're getting a new building, and Randy could secretly watch the Leafs while he's writing about the Flames. I mean, that's the good news.
He'll watch the Leafs on his phone while he's at the new Saddle Dome. There you go. Okay, so Tanev, according to the reports that I've heard, there's as many as 12 teams that are interested in him. If that is the case, there is no doubt in my mind, Pete, that they're getting a first-round pick. No doubt in my mind.
Oh, yeah, they'll get a first for Tanev. Someone will do it.
Yeah, I think someone will do it for Tanev because he's of a certain ilk. I think after Hanifin, Tanev is the next best guy. He's good. He's not great, but he's good. But he is a guy that's adaptable.
Well, he's adaptive. And you know what? He plays the kind of game that how do you say this without sounding offensive? He plays the kind of game that passes a lot of eye tests.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't mean that he's not a good player because he is.
Mm-hmm.
The good thing right now, and this is where, man, I'm not saying I wouldn't trade for him. I'm not saying I wouldn't want Chris Tanev on my team.
Mm-hmm.
He's had a really good run being injury-free.
Yep.
And you just wonder.
No, you beat me to the punch here
because
what they didn't say, and that is what you said is the truth. What Elliot Friedman said, and I agreed with it wholeheartedly, is teams. I mean, Calgary's got to be worried that because he's a shot blocker, that he doesn't block a shot and break a hand.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. This move might happen it might happen like this weekend because they need to make it because he could block a shot because that's what he's going to do and get hurt. And then you're screwed. Unless it's it's not probably not going to be a season-ending injury, but still your value goes down if a guy breaks his hand and he's out for 6 weeks. So that's the reality. Now, there's so many teams. Toronto's interested, but they don't want to give up a first-round pick, so that probably takes them out. And I think
I was 4.5,
and I don't think Toronto should give up a first-round pick.
No, but this is the thing, and I have to bring this up because it was talked about on Toronto radio, and Jason Bukala, who writes for Sportsnet, who's more of a scouting guy, but he for some reason he was doing like hypothetical trades, and he had a trade where Markstrom, who's playing really well this year, is going to Toronto, and Toronto would be trading Samsonov back and a first and a third round pick, and Markstrom's salary would be retained 50%. No, there's no way.
Did you say Niemela was in that too?
What's that? Oh, and Topi Niemela. And Topi Niemela, they're one of their best defensive prospects, was also in the deal.
Now, that's why I think he wrote they might be willing to retain because of that.
Well, that
would make it different than a lot of other deals that they wouldn't retain for in the past. That's all I'm thinking, Mike.
Yeah. Oh no, right. But that deal is patently absurd because Markstrom is
Calgary.
Well, right, Russ. I'm talking about in terms of balance. In terms of balance, it's ridiculous because Toronto is giving up, like, basically they don't even have to send anybody to Vegas. And maybe they can go send them to see the Sphere, but they're not going to be in the draft basically if they make that deal. And his thing was, well, Joseph Wall might not come back, or he's practicing. He's with the Marlies. He's going to be back next week. So I don't know. Maybe hey, everybody's got to write something, and a lot of I know Eric DeHachik did a lot of hypothetical deals. One of involving Calgary and Toronto, where Toronto would end up getting Chris Tanev and Matt Dumba, and I'm like, okay, how does that happen? I mean, it's just that's the thing. People don't realize that you can say, oh, well, they're going to get this guy and they're going to get that guy. They're like $86 under the cap. There's no way that they can do that. But Brandon Pridham invented the cap basically. So
let me just nip one thing in the bud here for the chat room.
Yep.
Sidney Crosby's not getting traded at the trade deadline. We can move on.
No. Sidney, okay. Kyle Dubas came out. That was the next one I wanted to talk about. Kyle Dubas came out and he said basically, he didn't say we're out of the playoff race, but he essentially opened I'm not trading the core guys. And apparently the core guys were Crosby, Malkin, Letang, and Carlson.
Right.
We included Carlson, and he had to include Carlson because he traded for contract. Okay. So that means Jake Gensel, see you later. Maybe Brian Rust and Marcus Pettersson, and I don't know about Jari, they need a goaltender. But who is that?
Jeff Carter.
Okay, good luck. But nobody's taking Jeff Carter. But nobody is taking Jeff Carter. This is Russ poking the bear.
They took Ryan Reeves. You don't think they would take Jeff Carter on the hope that he scores a few goals in the playoffs?
I don't.
I could see someone doing it.
Not Toronto.
I'm not a Jeff Carter fan, but my God, I mean, he's a big guy that's got playoff experience.
I'm sure he's going to go to Philadelphia, Russ. There's a couple desirable guys, but this is why, like, if I had been counseling Kyle Dubas, Pete, I would have told him, don't take the Pittsburgh job. I know you got 7 years, you got complete control that you didn't have in Toronto, but that organization, it's going one direction, it's going down, and it's a cluster F, and I wouldn't want any part of it.
So here's the thing with that, though. If you're a organization on the rise, you're never going to give someone in Dubas's position 7 years.
No,
right?
Exactly.
So you want stability on that. So Dubas, in Pittsburgh ownership's view, Dubas proved that over the long haul, he's got enough clout and respectability that give him 7 years, you should be able to figure this out. Right. Now, the test for Dubas is, do you have the stones and the ability to make the inevitable, very, very difficult decisions to do it, and the charisma to sell it to the players you're going to have to do it with? Well, I think that's the other bet they made, because Dubas's reputation with players and how he treated them in Toronto was very good.
Very good.
And I think, there's a lot of stories written about Dubas staying behind when young players got injured, visited him in the hospital when he could have gone back with the team and done things like that. That speaks a lot to teams. And if you have that touch and you have that ability to connect with players, there are 3 incredibly key cogs in that machine that are going to have to be dealt with soon. And maybe that's what you're really paying him for.
But here's the other thing, though. He got burnt out in Toronto for sure. He wanted to go to a nice city where his family isn't going to be accosted if they go to Tim Hortons and have saying, nice draft. Hey, when's the last time you won a cup? And they can be almost anonymous in a city like Pittsburgh, and their kids can go to school and they don't have to deal with any of that stuff, because even if the Penguins aren't doing well, their kids aren't going to get bothered at school. And I think that was a factor too. And I do think he could build them up. And I don't think he's going to get much blame if this part of the team fails, because everybody knows it's being driven by ownership.
Russ, I don't know how much of the factor that was, because he wanted to stay in Toronto and he lost the power struggle. I think, that I don't think he wanted to leave Toronto. I think Toronto.
Well, I mean, you remember that the whole
after the fact, I'm sure.
I mean, after the fact, he had a pretty compelling story. So I don't disagree with you that he would have stayed had he had more power. But I also think there's a point where you as a human say, I'm going to give up the fight here because I just need a less stressful job.
Yeah, and maybe now in Pittsburgh he sees how it was in Toronto, and he says, okay, but here's the thing. In terms of the Pittsburgh situation, Gensel, who I think was a broken wrist, they said he was going to be back maybe a week and a half after the deadline. So, he's not going to lose much value in terms of, I mean, I know reported that Vegas would be in on him. I'm sure Dallas, any team that's looking for a scoring forward. But his salary is not ridiculous, so there is some flexibility there, and Pittsburgh can retain salary on him, so that would make him even more marketable. But Russ, would you like Jake Gensel on the New York Rangers?
Yeah, I mean, I think they would like him. I don't think they could swing the deal though. They're not going to have that much cap space. So I don't know what the cap space number is now without Edel.
Yeah. He's okay. Gensel's a $6 million contract, and if they retain 50%, it's $3 million. And right now, the Rangers, in terms of current cap space, it says $4.3 million, which is what. Yeah. So,
and they need to do more than Gensel, right? So I don't think they're going to get anybody as high as Gensel. Again, I'm going to trumpet the same thing I've trumpeted 2 shows, Mike. And people have said it online. Johnny Brzezinski's done a good job. If the Rangers want, they could look for a forward, yes, a winger to be in the top 6, and maybe Gensel ends up being that guy, or they get somebody a little lesser, and they get another defenseman. I think they may end up going that route, because the center route, I think they're not going to trade Brennan Hoffman. Let's be real. That's their plum prospect. They're not trading him. They might trade a first. They might.
The 25 first. But yeah, no, I mean, okay. The center market right now, and I looked at it, I mean, and Pete, the Winnipeg was smart to get Monahan where they did. Mm-hmm. So it's Henrique, it's Tyler Johnson, it's Tommy Novak, and then there are a couple other guys out there that might be available. I mean, I know that Elliott reported about teams checking in Buffalo about Casey Middlestat. I don't know whether that's realistic. That's a hockey deal, because the Sabres don't want to make a deal for draft picks and prospects. So, but the Rangers might say, okay, we can't improve ourselves with the centers that are out there, but we can improve ourselves by getting a scoring winger. And if we do that, then
I can't argue with you on that. That is a possibility.
So curious, just because I went after Naz sort of showed the amount of contracts expiring in Pittsburgh. I'm wondering if you could get Riley Smith with some salary retained and throw him in there.
Riley Smith is next to Gensel was the most attractive piece.
Yeah, Vegas could want him again.
Vegas or Florida. That's where the two, which he played in both places. So, I mean, I could see him going back to Vegas. I mean, because either Eichel or Stone will be back on game 1 of the first round. That's probably the way.
Yeah, so I think we should have a pool on Mark Stone's return.
Right. Yeah, I say
let's pick the date and the hour.
Give me
the announcement comes
in. The odds will probably be minus.
Just to answer Michael Cohen too. Yeah, I don't think Scott Lawton could get a first. Could it be a conditional, like if the team makes a Stanley Cup? Sure.
There are not that many.
Count that as a first. You'll count it as a first for a couple months, but it may not happen. That's as close as I think a first that they're going to get for him.
Yeah, there are not that many firsts. Like what is Arizona going to end up with every first round pick in the first round at the Sphere?
Yeah, unless they take like a 26 or a 27, sure.
Yeah, I mean,
what's the age gap on the Flyers like?
It's they have added on some 24, 25-year-olds, but then you got Hathaway and you got Delorier and you've got Couturier.
How long have they been out of the playoffs?
they were in the
bubble. They were in it
in the
2019
in the bubble. Okay,
they advanced to second.
Yeah,
round.
I'm just looking at them now. I guess how I would look at it is I don't see the need for Briere to make a deal that isn't beneficial to them longer term than just, well, we could do this, get a pick and go from there.
Yeah.
If that team gets themselves in and maybe they go out in 4, maybe they make it a series, maybe they make the second round. Who knows? They've shown that they have the ability to make something happen. Is there value for them to just let it ride and see what happens?
Well,
and that the part of the learning curve.
For this reason, Chuck Fletcher let it ride and got destroyed, lost his job. Even though the fans would be happy if they made the playoffs, they also are realistic and know, hey, we've got to have a future plan here too. And if they don't address that and do nothing, Briere will take some heat. Nothing will happen to him, but he'll take some heat for not doing anything because Fletcher did nothing.
But is it better for Briere to come? So Russ, does that eliminate doing something in the offseason? No. And a little more calculated where there's some cap room at play. There isn't the trade deadline pressure and such like that. Because essentially, unless you're, unless you're Sealer, Walker, or Stahl, you're taking a contract on. You're taking another year on. And is that something feasible right now?
Well, I mean, they don't expect to be in it every year. Let's say that. So they would probably take that contract on because that's fine. They're a team that's trying to get better in the long term. They want assets in the next couple of drafts. They started to build some. They want more. Right. But I think in the end, what you're saying is the problem is, let's say they do nothing, right? Do nothing. And everybody goes, good job, Danny. We're going to make the playoffs, whatever. And they get eliminated last day of the season. Then how does that look?
Yeah.
But does it prevent, again, is their situation so dire that those deals can't come back around later on?
It's not dire, but it's at the point where they can't make a mistake like that. Like they can't make a miscalculation like that and expect they will take a lot of heat if they don't make the playoffs and do nothing. Because fans are going to be like, hey, look.
But they're in playoff position now.
He'll get excoriated if he doesn't make it.
He will. They are in position now, but as we all know, what if they lose 5 in a row? What happens?
Right.
Like this is a 5 in a row league.
So should they be buyers?
No.
So they're kind of in a tough
trade.
Tough
comment. Make a hockey trade and get another 24-year-old, like if we talked about Peyton Krebs or something.
Right.
That's always a possibility. And if it makes them better, it makes them better. They're not going to go get a goalie. That doesn't make sense because you already have to figure out what to do with Peterson next year. I don't think that's a good workable situation. But in the end, Pete, you still have to say, okay, there's a chance we make the playoffs, but there's a chance we don't. And we're not extending everybody. So that's why they're talking to guys now and they're seeing who are the deals that we're willing to go with forward. Like I had a feeling Torts was going to want to keep Sealer, right?
Yeah, but Russ.
Trade deadline passes. Briere does nothing. He holds his press conference. Right. He comes out and says, look, he comes out in a press conference. Does he have enough leeway with the fan base and ownership to say there were deals to be made, if he would say this, but they weren't the right deals for our strategic direction and goals? Does he have enough leeway?
No, because the last guy said that too.
Okay, there you go. That's why I asked it.
And the messaging from the Flyers all year has been inconsistent with what the team has been doing. They've been talking rebuild,
right?
And they're competing for a playoff spot. They trade their top 5 or top 7 pick in Cutter Gauthier for a guy who could play now in Jamie Dreisen. That deal was not consistent with a rebuild. It was consistent with a team that wants to win now. And that's why, like, I don't understand what's going on in Philadelphia. But, I mean, let me just touch on these two things before we end the show. A team like Buffalo, who's got 6 unrestricted free agents, I think only one of those free agents is somebody you can actually get some value for, and that's Eric Johnson, because everybody wants defensemen. But they're in a situation here where they've got one guy who's their captain, who might get some value out there, but probably out of respect to him, they're only going to trade him where he wants to go, and he may not want to go anywhere, Kyle Oposo. And the other one, Girgensons, is a fourth-line guy, but he's been with the organization over 10 years, and either they want to keep him to let him finish out his career in Buffalo, or trade him where he wants to go. So they have 6 unrestricted free agents, but in actuality, they have maybe 2 that they can get something tangible for, and the rest of them, that's the situation with them. And unless they make a Middlestat deal or a Krebs deal, both of which could happen in the summer, they're really stuck. And this is a frustrated fan base that is seeing a team that is going to miss the playoffs for the 13th straight year and is saying, what is going to change? And over 13 years, not much has changed. A lot of players have changed, coaches have changed, general managers have changed, but the result has not changed.
One last thing, and this should worry a lot of fans and teams. A lot of teams go till the last minute, like with Hannafin, like Pete said, and they all wait till the last minute. And let's say the last minute, the Bruins pull off getting a center and Hannafin, they might be the Stanley Cup favorite at that point.
Yeah, and what was that deal that was at Montreal and the Islanders, the Vanek deal, where it came out, everyone was talking first round pick and big prospects and this and that, and Vanek didn't move. And then at 259, he got traded for a second round pick and Sebastian Kohlberg. And I'm like, that return was not what people were talking about. At a certain point, if you get something close to what you want in the deal, you do the deal.
I just think the Bruins are laying in the weeds here. That's all.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the center and Hannafin, definitely. And the other one, and we'll be debating this. And the thing was, I've been consistent on this when it comes to Toronto. I don't think they're good enough to win the Stanley Cup. I don't think they're really up against it in terms of potentially who they could trade, who they could play in the first round. But now they've won 6 games in a row, and now everybody's like, oh my God, the Leafs are really good. And this, the feeling is, Russ, that this could force Treliving into the uncomfortable position of, even though he knows the team isn't good enough, he's got to add somebody at the deadline to help them, to help their chances. Right. And in my estimation, add an Ilya Lyubushkin, add a Matt Dumba, add that right shot defenseman, but don't go balls out and trade your first round pick for Tanev.
Yeah, Dumba's not going to be cheap. Lyubushkin would be less expensive.
Dumba probably would be a 3rd round pick. He is not the guy that he has been in the past. He is not, he's got 9 points this year, and I watched him. He's not as good. I mean,
he's still physical though.
He's still physical, but I mean, yeah. So
I get what you're saying. I still think it ends up being a 2nd round pick for Dumba. I don't know.
Yeah. And last thing, I just have to bring this up. So Rangers Devils last night, Russ, and is it Matt Rempe?
Matt
Rempe, the Rangers rookie, who's what, 23, 24 years old?
6'7", yeah.
Okay. 6'7", and he lays out Nathan Bastian with a hit.
Actually, it's Remp. I don't know why I said Rempe with you, but yeah,
Remp? Okay.
Yeah.
He lays out Nathan Bastian with a hit. Nathan Bastian is not a small guy. I think he's 6'3" or 6'4". Rempe is 6'7", hits him head contact, principal point of contact, and it is now after 4:00 on the following day, and there's been nothing from the Department of Player Safety. Nothing. And this is what I mean about the Department of Player Safety.
Oh, yeah.
An absolute friggin' joke.
Mike, 100% agree with you. The issue is, again, I'll go back to, if you want to talk about the Department of Player Safety being inconsistent, not seeing the same thing, having all sorts of caveats of based on conditions, hidden agendas, and whatever you want, tinfoil tube stuff, I'm there with you.
Yep.
But it doesn't mean that when they look at something and decide to take it, that they don't have a reason to go all in or whatever like that. They're two different problems. We want to correlate them together, but they're not the same thing. Anyways, that's all I got to say about that.
Him not getting suspended will be very interesting in Philly with, Gordon Hathaway and Nick Delorier there.
I'm sure Bradford Living and Brendan Shanahan are scratching their heads right now at how one guy gets 5 games and this guy doesn't even get a fine. Hasn't even got.
And to the haters out there, they're going to say something like, I'm okay with this. No, I would have given him a 1-game suspension, just so you know.
Yeah. All right. We'll end it there. We'll be back on Monday with another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast. For Pete Tessier, for Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thank you for watching. And remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.